name is Carlo Antonio Flores. I go by Carlo A. Flores. Where did I grow up? I grew up in the San Francisco Bay Area, mostly the East Bay. I grew up in Oakland, San Leandro, Hayward area. Berkeley, lived in Berkeley for a few years. Most of my childhood was spent in San Leandro. I went to San Leandro High School, and then I went to the California College of the Arts in San Francisco, and that's where I got my degree in graphic design. Is that good? Yeah, and I got my degree in graphic design, print focused. I worked on a lot of posters and layout and book design and ads and posters. I love doing posters. I got involved in the with the American Conservatory Theater, which is a theater company in San Francisco, very well known. A lot of famous actors have gone there, and I was producing a lot of their print materials, including their posters for their big productions. So that's a lot of my my print and graphic design background. I've lived here in LA for 7 years. I came here looking for more work. I had worked up north in the Bay Area in television. I did a lot of local and public television. I worked for 2 big local TV stations up there. I was an art director there, and I had decided at some point that I wanted to come here to LA to pursue more better work. What is it? Higher caliber work. I came here wanting to do more advertising and work in the television and film industry, since I'd gotten a taste of that up north. And yeah, so I came here with nothing in my hand, a little bit of money and nowhere to stay, no gigs. Came down here and got in touch with companies, and within 6 months I had an apartment and I was working in the industry. I started working in the industry here. I worked for a company called Syndrome Studios, where I was able to do stage graphics for a lot of well-known music artists like Demi Lovato, Pharrell, Kelly Clarkson, and Shakira. In fact, last year I was flown out to Barcelona, where I worked on Shakira's rehearsal for her new international tour this year. I was there for 2 weeks, and I art directed her stage graphics for her international tour. I've also worked for Disney Studios. I worked for ABC Television, where I designed a lot of motion graphics and titles for a lot of their upcoming shows. I also worked for, and I've had a long-term gig at Warner Brothers, their CW network, where I've done graphics and titles for shows like Supergirl, Supernatural, Riverdale. We just finished a big campaign for Black Lightning. I've done a ton of other commercial projects. I've done stuff for Home Depot, Office Depot, Nike, Apple. I've worked for Beats by Dre. I've done a lot of advertising work over the past 10 years. And it's been my main source of income and my main passion. I love doing motion graphics and design. What I've done has evolved from graphic design, which was again a lot of print design and posters, into motion graphics, which is moving picture, graphics, and narrative. I love a lot of narrative graphics, and with motion graphics you have a story behind it, things are moving, you know, there's this narrative thread that's really interesting that I love, which got me into motion graphics. Again, things moving is, it's really interesting, it's beautiful, it can be so many different things, and it can have a story that goes along with it, which I really enjoy, which has been why I've stayed with motion graphics. And it's been awesome just working with a lot of different people and artists, whether it's Demi Lovato or Apple. It's like I've enjoyed all of that stuff. Since I was a child, I've always had an interest in lucha libre. Being Mexicano, I would go to visit my family in Mexico constantly. We'd have constant trips there, and naturally we'd go to a lucha libre fight. And I always loved it. I loved the mask. I loved the theatrics and the fighting. It was always so cool and exciting, and always it meant to me like they were superheroes that I could enjoy, like they were Mexicano superheroes that were really cool, and you didn't know their their backstory. They wore their mask and they were their character, and I just loved it, and it's always stayed with me since then, and I've always had a passing interest in lucha libre. Being in advertising and doing a lot of work for a lot of superhero properties like Marvel, Disney, and Warner Brothers, I realized that we had our own superhero properties. We have our own superheroes. Those are those lucha libre icons, El Santo, Mil Mascaras, Blue Demon. These are all amazing superheroes with identities of their own, and they're saving the world. It just really spoke to me, and I really wanted to do something that took that mythology and sort of modernized it, and also use my skill for narrative that I'd gained through motion graphics and put that together and do some story about a cool luchador, luchadors, create some cool characters. And that was how the Mighty Luchador was born. Again, I want to use my expertise in advertising and use that, and my expertise in narrative, and use that in creating this storyline of the Mighty Luchador, and create the good guy, Almighty, and the bad guy, Sinestro, and create some rich narrative that was based off of an homage to the classic lucha libre heroes, Santo, Blue Demon, all those classic lucha libre luchadors, those classic luchadors. I created these characters, and I wanted to explore my artistic side, and so I wanted them to have a very artistic, sculptural side to them, but also again speak to the mythology of lucha libre and be true to that, and also sort of take the aesthetic of Day of the Dead and infuse that, which there's always been a thread of that through lucha libre and Mexican culture, and I wanted to use those visual cues in my figures. So again, I created these figures as a way to express my ability in design and sculpture and be true to my Mexican heritage. So it started out with the figures, and from there, the Mighty Luchador for me felt like a brand. It felt like it was larger than life. It's more than just the figures. It's a way of living. We're all the Mighty Luchador at heart. That felt like it was important to me. And again, going beyond sort of the superhero trope, in that it was like, here's the Mighty Luchador, like the mighty fighter, it's sort of the mighty superhero, but again, true to Mexican culture and true to my roots and my background. So I've been working on the Mighty Luchador now for about 4 years. Again, it started with the vinyl figure component, and since then it's sort of grown beyond that. It includes apparel, it includes original art, it includes what's new, a comic book. I've written a comic book to flesh out the story behind the Mighty Luchador. When I first came up with the characters, I had a very strong story in mind that again borrowed from a lot of Day of the Dead. So from that, I created the characters, and I wanted to tell that story, and what better way of telling the story of the Mighty Luchador than was through a comic book. I'm pretty excited by the comic book. The comic book has allowed me to explore a lot more than I could have, whether it was through the figures or through the brand. And outside of that, it's going to be a continuing story. I'm excited about the second issue, which I'm just finishing. That's going to be a longer issue. And it's the first comic book was more of a tease, sort of the story on how they became their little crazy selves. The second comic book will explore more of the relationship and have more dialogue and more story around those characters, and I'm really excited about it. And it's going to be much longer. Outside of that, again, the brand encompasses a lot of different artists as well. We've had my main artist, Eric Hibbler, who's over in Kansas City, and he's done a majority of the art. He's done the comic book art as well, and a lot of the promo art, and we've worked together on it. He's an amazing artist, and so basically the process that we have is I draw most of this. Obviously I've designed most of it, if not all of it, and he's taken it a step further. He's really given the Mighty Luchador a personality of its own and taken my base designs and just kind of run with it. His art is very fluid. His art is very classic. It's based very much in vintage pulp film posters. That's what I love about it, and I think it's completely appropriate, especially considering this is Lucha Libre. Lucha Libre became most popular during the 60s, and his art speaks to that 60s mentality and look and feel, and that's why I love it. And you know, we powwow together, and he's done a great job of just interpreting everything I've created for the Mighty Luchador and giving it an iconic look. The Mighty Luchador is extremely important to me, and it's going to be my legacy, and definitely what I'll be leaving this planet with. The Mighty Luchador is very important to me, and I will be continuing it for years to come. I'll just continue pushing it. There's so many stories to tell and so many more characters to create and design and bring to life. The second comic book will be exploring some new characters that I'll be revealing, like a female luchadora, and a few new luchadors in the new comic book, so I'm very excited about that. What is it about my art that sets me free? Well, again, I've always had an interest in narrative and story, and there's something amazing and freeing about just writing about these crazy luchadors that I've come up with that have been inspired by real luchadors and real people in my life. Like some of these luchadors, like Senor Fuego, even Sinestro and Almighty, they're all aspects of both people in my life and also aspects of my own life. And both the first comic book and the upcoming comic book deal with some aspects of my life and story that I've sort of interwoven into the Mighty Luchador, that makes the Mighty Luchador feel a lot more authentic to myself and what I'm communicating to the audience. Again, I have a career and background in graphic design. I do motion graphics as my main bread and butter. That said, this allows me to do my own thing. You know, I'm not constricted by Disney or Marvel or whomever. It's like I get to create the story, I get to create the narrative, I get to create the characters, and I get to decide what they do and have fun with it. And you know, again, it's my interpretation of it. These are my superheroes that I get to have fun with and explore and create adventures around that are loosely based on my life and loosely based on the mythology of Lucha Libre and Mexican culture. And in the end, something that speaks to me at heart and to my culture and being closer to my roots and where I come from and my family and my history being a Mexican American. I have two trades. Again, there's the motion graphics aspect, doing motion graphics for superhero properties, you know, Supergirl, Flash, da-da-da. And then there is my trade, there is my creative project, which is the Mighty Luchador. And with the Mighty Luchador, you know, another freeing aspect of that is the fact that I can use any and every tool available. I can use video, which again I have a big background in, and art, and color, and composition, and design, a lot of design that gets involved, whether it's the t-shirts or whether it's the characters, and through all of that there's the thread of story. And story, again, is so important, and meaning behind that story. That's so important to me, and that the tool of narrative and creating story is really important to me, and that is particularly freeing for myself as an artist. You can follow us on social media, on Instagram and Facebook. Just look up The Mighty Luchador or hashtag The Mighty Luchador. You could go to our main website, themightyluchador.com. There you can find figures, comic books, candles, apparel. It's all there and ready to purchase. Also, you can view my personal work at carlosoutpost.com. That includes all my advertising work, my work for music artists, and my work for Marvel and Warner Brothers.